Hello and welcome to the Met Office Deep Dive, our weekly in-depth look at all matters meteorological, and there are plenty of meteorological matters to look at this week. Supercell, thunderstorms, tornadoes, hail, 13,000 lightning strikes, 2 months worth of rain in just a few days. And that's just looking at last week's weather. What's to come in the next week? Whatever happens, it's certainly going to keep us interested, I'm sure. Now, before I get on with it, just a regular reminder to hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. These deep dives are exclusive to our YouTube channel, so if you love watching them, make sure you hit subscribe, hit like, send us a comment, and that way it will just encourage us to do more of this sort of thing in the future. And don't forget to tell your friends as well. If you've got any friends who love talking or hearing about the weather, then let them know that this exists. But yeah, it was certainly a crazy few days of weather through the weekend and into the start of this week. Not for everyone, of course. Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England had a quieter time, and I'll talk more about northern parts of the UK in a few minutes, but I wanted to cover the really interesting weather that occurred across southern parts of the UK first of all. Lightning, lots of lightning, more than we saw throughout much of the summer. This one was a lightning strike in Staffordshire. Staffordshire saw an awful lot of lightning on Saturday. This is from Saturday evening. But of course, we saw an awful lot of rainfall, which sadly led to submerged roads and cars, led to property flooding and transport disruption. This, the A421 in Bedfordshire, quite a scary scene there with that main road underwater. More on the rainfall totals in a moment. But a tornado as well in Aldershot on Friday. This was the damage from the tornado, as reported by BBC South Weather. Well done, BBC South Weather, for not calling it a mini tornado. That's great. They're not mini tornadoes just because they happen in the UK. They're all tornadoes. No such thing as a mini tornado, as some media outlets like to talk about. But yeah, some devastating wind gusts from that tornado there, and it was confirmed as a tornado by Toro, which is the official tornado research organisation in the UK. So yeah, head to their website if you want to learn more about tornadoes and look at the more recent tornadoes that we've seen. There was a tornado, not sure if it's been officially confirmed or not, but it looked like it was a tornado in Luton as well on Sunday. But I'm going to focus on the tornado in Aldershot, which happened on Friday, because it's really interesting imagery from that. Let's go to the lightning map and let's zoom in a little bit. I'll just pause it there. Okay, where are we up to? This is 7 a.m. on Friday. So up to this point, no rain, no thunderstorms across the UK. We just had 4 days of virtually entirely dry weather across the UK, warm sunshine and so on. But Friday's the day things started to destabilise. What we saw over the near continent was something known as a cold pool, an upper area of low pressure, and much colder air way up high near where the jet stream lies. And of course, where you've got this build-up of warmth and humidity across southern parts of the UK at lower levels, which we saw through last week, build-up of warmth and humidity, and then this upper area of low pressure causing the air to rise and much colder air way up, well, that leads to deep instability where the air is cooling off very quickly as you go higher in the sky. And what that means is that anything that gets warmed up at the surface rises quickly, because it's, you know, as it's rising, always warmer than its surroundings. And as long as it's warmer than its surroundings, it continues to rise, just like a hot air balloon. So what you've effectively got is all this warmth and humidity at the surface. Upper cold pool comes along from the south, destabilizing the air, and boom, you get thunderstorms. Not just that, but you get something known as wind shear, and that's what we saw on Friday, and that's a key ingredient for some really lively storms. And let me explain a little bit about wind shear and why it's important for thunderstorms. Imagine you've got that rising air, the updrafts, and you've got the difference between the warm and humid air at the surface and the colder air above. But you've got no wind shear. Wind shear is basically the change of the wind with height. Either it's changing direction as you go higher in the atmosphere, or it's changing speed. One or the other, or both. If you've got no wind shear, then you've got an updraft forming. The air rises, it cools, it condenses, you get a cumulonimbus cloud forming, then it starts raining. As the rain falls, it pulls colder air down with it, known as a downdraft, and that, if there's no wind shear, will basically fall on top of the updraft and kill it off, and subsequently kill off the thunderstorm. So single cell thunderstorms, that's what these are called, when there's little or no wind shear, they tend to not last that long. Short, sharp shower, rumble or two of thunder, possibly, then it's all over in around an hour or less sometimes. So this is often known as popcorn convection as well. These little popcorn showers can pop up here and there. They don't last long and they don't cause too much concern apart from a bit of a drenching if you're caught under one. But they will occur when there's little or no change in the wind with height. Either the winds are light through the atmosphere or they're all travelling in the same direction as you go higher up with the same sort of speed. So the downdraft falls on top of the updraft, basically. Now, if there is wind shear, let's say the wind is strengthening as you go higher up in the atmosphere, then the updraft will tilt a little bit, and so the rising air will move to the west, for example, faster at 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet compared with the surface. So the whole thing's tilted. So the updraft moves up in a diagonal line. Then the downdraft falls, but it doesn't fall back in that same diagonal line, so it doesn't cut off the updraft. What it does do is it hits the ground, and the colder air that's coming down from above spreads out as it hits the surface. And this, known as a gust front, can then travel along and meet a wind coming in a different direction, slightly detached from the original cell of the thunderstorm. And as those winds collide, they can form another updraft. And this new updraft causes a new cell and a new downpour and rumble of thunder or something, and a new diagonal updraft, a new downdraft, a new gust front, and then subsequently meets another wind coming in a different direction, another updraft, and so on. Meanwhile, the original updraft and downdraft have sort of dissipated, and you've got what's known as a multi-cell thunderstorms, where each storm leads to another storm cell in a slightly different place, and then another storm cell in a different place, and so on. These storm cells keep popping up maybe in a line or something. That's known as a multi-cell storm. So they last longer, they can last for a few hours, and they can be a bit more vigorous because they don't die off so quickly. Now, a supercell thunderstorm is similar in that the updraft is detached from the downdraft, but the difference is that you've perhaps got more wind shear. You've maybe got some directional wind shear as well as the wind changing speed with height, and you've got a very vigorous updraft, a very fast updraft, because you've got this deep instability. And as a result, not only is the updraft going in a diagonal line as you go up through the atmosphere, but it can start to rotate, and that rotating updraft can become a tornado. And that's what we saw in Aldershot on Friday. So I just want to play the radar and the, well, actually it's just the lightning for now. Now this is 9 a.m. You see London there. This is Kent. And this is 9 a.m. Lightning starting to occur. Very little, actually. Let's put the rainfall radar on. Very little rain elsewhere. This small cluster of thunderstorms that just started. There's Aldershot. I'm just going to play it forward, and it will pause at exactly the time that the tornado was reported, 12:25 on Friday. So there we go, it's paused. I'll zoom right in. And what you can see, there's Aldershot, and the heaviest rain, let's zoom in further actually. Turn off the lightning. The heaviest rain has already gone through Aldershot when the tornado hit. So these brighter colours here, that's where the heaviest rain is, just to the north and the west of Aldershot. And the storm is moving in that direction. Now this is a supercell thunderstorm. We know this because it produced a tornado, but not just that, it's the shape of the system as well. And if we look at the satellite image. Fascinating, this what we call an anvil of high cloud that's extended out to the west. And so what we're seeing here is the upper winds are going faster than the surface winds. So you've got that wind shear, and the upper winds are blowing this high cloud further west than the rainfall radar is producing rain at the lower levels, and also further west than the actual surface winds are blowing. So we've got this wind shear, and also if I draw some arrows on here, you can see the structure from above, the typical structure of a supercell thunderstorm. So here you've got the most intense rain. That's where the downdraft is happening. So you've got a downdraft that's spreading out from this really heavy area of rain and potentially hail as well. Bear in mind that rain has just gone through Aldershot. You've also got, that's called the forward flank downdraft. I didn't have to read that off the thing. And then you've got this rear flank downdraft here. So another downdraft area here, but that's the main downdraft coming out of there. Then you've got this warm, moist inflow coming into here. That's the updraft as it comes in, feeding into the rear side of the supercell thunderstorm. And the whole thing rotates, and just in there, you've got this rotating updraft. And so that's where the tornado happened. Just there, Aldershot, 12:25. Now, some of you might have watched the movie Twister, or indeed Twisters, and you'll know that you don't want to, if you're storm chasing, approach a supercell thunderstorm from the wrong direction. If you were to approach it from here, you've got to go through the really heavy rain before you get to the tornado. You're not going to see the tornado. That's a really dangerous thing to do. You go through that, you get the really heavy rain, low visibility, then you're hit by the tornado. So storm chasers tend to come in this side. You've got the better visibility. You can see the tornado on the rear side of the storm as it's moving that way. And yeah, that's a much safer way to chase storms. Additionally, down here you've got the gust front, and that can also be an area of formation for further thunderstorms, and that's actually what we saw. If I run the sequence further forward a little bit, oh, gone a bit too quickly, and put the lightning back on. So just in this area here, it developed into further thunderstorms that went through the southwest of England. Mostly Somerset, parts of Devon as well, later in the day. This is 4 p.m. on Friday. But this area of thunderstorms was really lively, going through Gloucestershire. And Gloucestershire itself, the county of Gloucestershire, saw 2,700 lightning strikes on Friday alone. And you can see how many of those lightning strikes there were. So this supercell thunderstorm, it sort of split into two. We had all these lightning strikes go up to the northwest, and then this other cluster, these new thunderstorms that developed just on the southern flank of it as it moved west. So a very, very lively day there. And then just playing it through for the rest of the weekend. Those arrows are going to stay on there for a moment. We saw more heavy downpours and thunderstorms developing through Saturday, and again, some very, very big storms that went through the Midlands in particular. Staffordshire had, I believe, 1,700 thunderstorms on Saturday itself. Just double check the number on that so I get it right. 1,752. And for the UK as a whole, mostly it was the south and central parts of England on Friday. The UK as a whole, 6,432 strikes of lightning, and on Saturday, 6,589 strikes of lightning. They were more centred on Saturday across the Midlands. They were further south on Friday. Further thunderstorms happened, of course, on Sunday. Not quite as many lightning strikes on Sunday, but some very heavy rain. And we've got Woburn on the graphic here, and they saw some extremely heavy rain. In just a few hours, they had their September average rainfall. And then throughout Sunday and into the start of Monday, they'd had a huge amount of rainfall for just a day and a half. I'm just going to show you some rainfall totals here. So Woburn had the most amount of rain. These are 48-hour totals, 147 millimetres in total. Their average for September is 55, so that's 267% of their September average in 3 days. Apologies, that's 3 days rainfall, Saturday, Sunday and Monday, because of course we saw more rain on Monday with an amber warning. Again, some very heavy rain. And it wasn't just Woburn, but South Newington there, Chipping Norton, parts of Northamptonshire. So really it was Oxfordshire, Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire, Hertfordshire, Warwickshire. Yeah, central parts of England really, really got a deluge. And you can see that on this map here. This shows the percentage up to this point of September, to the 23rd of September, percentage of September's average rainfall. Scotland, Northern Ireland, Eastern England, drier than their September average, but across this part of the Midlands into central southern England, a large swathe, more than double their September average rainfall. And that roughly coincides with where we saw all these flashes of lightning. These are the number of lightning strikes for the first 23 days of September, and you can see this big cluster. These were Friday's lightning strikes, so moving up through Kent, home counties, into parts of central southern England, Gloucestershire there, really a focal point for all those thunderstorms. And then Saturday's thunderstorms a bit further north, but an awful lot of storms. Like I say, 6,500 on Friday, roughly 6,500 on Saturday as well across much of England and Wales. Very little further north, like I say. And just to finish on that, it is something that the Met Office have been talking about in terms of future projections of climate change. That is that these kinds of summer-style big thunderstorms and very intense rainfall rates are likely to extend further into autumn, so into September, late September and so on. And so one of the projections from UK climate projections is that future climate change is projected to bring about a change in the seasonality of extremes, and that is an extension of the convective season from summer into autumn. And yeah, the very, very, very high rainfall totals that we saw through the weekend. Woburn, by the way, 24-hour record for Woburn, and their records go back more than 100 years. So some very extreme weather that we saw in the UK. Speaking of extreme weather, there's also, on the other side of the Atlantic, expected to be some extreme weather. We've got Hurricane John, which is currently affecting Mexico. That's on the other side of North America, or Central America. But now we've got this tropical storm, potential tropical storm 9. And this is likely to become a hurricane in the next 24 hours. And it's likely to move through the Gulf of Mexico and hit Florida as a major hurricane sometime around Thursday night UK time. So this could be a very destructive beast. This could bring a large amount of sea surge, damaging winds and flash flooding, because there's likely to be along its path 200 to 400 millimetres of rainfall. So yeah, that's something that meteorologists all across the world will be monitoring over the next couple of days as that likely becomes a major hurricane. Now, I mentioned wind shear as something that helps to sustain supercell thunderstorms, but wind shear does the opposite for hurricanes, because wind shear, where you've got the change in wind with height, tends to tear apart hurricanes. It makes them less powerful. At the moment, there's a bit of wind shear coming off the Yucatan Peninsula, and that is hindering the development of this storm. But as it moves away from that area, there's actually very little wind shear as it moves north, and as a result, it is likely to develop very quickly. We've got high sea surface temperatures there as well. So yeah, that's something we'll be keeping a close eye on over the next few days. Back to the UK though, and back to this week's weather, and it's all about to change once again. So we saw summer-like humidity, warmth and thunderstorms through the weekend as the autumn equinox occurred. Now, however you like to define autumn, it has truly begun, and this week it's going to feel certainly more like autumn because the jet stream is going to become more involved with our weather once again. This streak of the jet stream currently sitting above the Atlantic, but moving towards the UK over the next few days. And it's south shifted compared with climatology, so a more typical position for the jet stream is somewhere closer to northwest Scotland or between Iceland and Scotland. So it's shifted south. That's been a common theme with our weather over the last year or so. And yeah, here it comes again into Wednesday. And it's picking up areas of low pressure. It's helping to spin them up and carry them towards the UK. Now, these areas of low pressure, they're not going to be particularly deep. They're not going to bring particularly strong winds. The strongest winds will actually be, we put on the wind gust graphic there, and actually be across parts of northern France. You can see this swathe coming in there on Thursday night. But the UK is likely to see further wet weather, which of course many places don't need, particularly central and southern parts of England and Wales. So more wet weather to come because of that. Let's take a look at the wet weather over the next few days. We've got showers out there for Tuesday afternoon, mostly dry in the south, thankfully. Showers, though, coming into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, some longer spells of wet weather for northeast Scotland. Fast forward 24 hours, and here comes that low pressure. Really, it's from the word go that showers in the south become more and more prolonged. After a largely bright start for Scotland, Northern Ireland, as well as parts of Northern England, some fog patches around, but otherwise largely bright, the rain arrives into the south and southwest, and that rain becomes heavier. It does move through. Now, 25 to 40 millimetres of rain is expected across some western and southern parts of the UK, but it does move through, so nothing as extreme as we saw over the weekend. Then into Thursday, the start of Thursday, it tends to stall. Now, all the while, we've got colder air coming into the north of Scotland, so a touch of frost overnight here in some sheltered spots over the next few nights. It stays bright but showery in the north, and while we've got that cold air in place, these systems are coming up from the southwest and they're tending to stall. And this is a cause for concern because you can see those bright colours on the rainfall forecast across northeast England, particularly through Thursday morning. So it could be a tricky start to the day for Newcastle and Leeds perhaps, but the rainfall will mount up most over the hills, North York Moors, the Pennines and so on. And there is a Met Office warning in force, and this is the area it covers. For Thursday, there's the risk of 80 to 100 millimetres of rainfall over some of the wetter spots, like I say, North York Moors, parts of the Pennines, more widely 25 to 50 millimetres within that warning area. So risk of localised flooding, risk of transport disruption. Now, once that clears through, another big change happens in the UK's weather. We've got much colder air arriving. There's Thursday's weather, the front stalling across northern parts, and then low pressure eventually moves away. Friday morning, the rain continues to move south, but eventually brighter skies arrive as the winds change to northerlies across the whole of the country. And then the kind of weather that northern Scotland's experiencing over the next few days sinks south to cover the whole of the UK by Friday afternoon. So we've got these northerly winds directly from the north for a time, certainly across northern parts of the UK. So much colder than average. It doesn't last long, though. We've got a cold start to the weekend, a widespread ground frost, a touch of air frost in places to start off Saturday, but a ridge of higher pressure building in. And that will lead to a lot of fine weather for Saturday and into Sunday, certainly across southern parts of the UK. Just a few showers further north. I'm going to talk about temperatures in just a minute, but while we're on the subject of mostly fine weather, here's how Saturday starts. A much quieter day, certainly, for southern and central parts compared with last weekend. And you can see plenty of sunshine for northern and central England, southern areas. Just some showers coming to the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and the southwest. And then into Sunday, more of the same effectively. A bright start to the day, a few fog patches, a few more showers coming into the northwest, but otherwise a lot of fine weather through the weekend. But temperatures are going to be suppressed. We're going to see below average temperatures. These are the actual values, so staying relatively normal across southern parts through the next few days. This is Thursday, 18 Celsius in the south, but we've got the cold air in place further north, certainly feeling cold where we've got the rain in the northeast of England, for example, eastern Scotland, 11 to 14 Celsius at best. Then into Friday, those temperatures are coming down, so 13 to 15 in the south, 9 to 11 further north. And by Saturday, what have we got? Similar sort of things again, just 10 to 12 Celsius in the north. These are the daytime temperatures, of course. Overnight temperatures are going to be lower still. Main urban areas, high single figures, but low single figures in some shelter spots, and perhaps in some of the most sheltered spots, a touch of air frost. How does that compare with average? Let's just go back to that. This is how the maximum temperatures compare with average. Wednesday's below average across the UK, about average on Thursday in the south, but you can see significantly below average, so 3 or more degrees below average across southern Scotland, northern England, parts of Wales. Into Friday, that below average air is across the whole of the UK, and it stays cold into Saturday. So below average temperatures as we end the week as those northerly winds arrive. How about into next week? Because we end the period. We go into the weekend with a lot of fine weather, but it doesn't last because next area of low pressure soon turns up. That's likely to bring some very windy weather across western parts of the UK on Monday morning and a band of rain. Then that low tends to stick around through next week, or at least become replaced by another low, and it generally turns cool and showery with the most frequent showers across western parts. This is the mean sea level pressure, so the pressure pattern anomaly for the week of next Monday to the following Monday, and it shows low pressure anomaly over the top of the UK, indicating that we're just going to see low pressure basically through next week. No signs for any really significant rain and wind, but it's likely to be unsettled. Blustery showers mostly, but some longer spells of rain at times, particularly in the west and especially at the start of next week. And perhaps after those stronger winds at the start of next week, it is going to stay blustery, and as a result it's going to stay cool as well. So cooler than average conditions for that same period, that same 7-day period. And finally, this shows the same period, and it shows the basically rough position of where you'd expect the jet stream. Big low over the UK, south shifted jet stream around that. So quite a strong signal there from the computer models that we're going to see low pressure arrive at the start of next week after a relatively fine, if rather cool, weekend. And that low pressure is likely to last for at least a week or so, bringing generally cool and showery weather. Beyond that, this is from the Met Office output. Again, this shows that 7-day period, low pressure centred over the UK and parts of Scandinavia. Now, beyond that, what the Met Office output, the longer range output, is showing is a build of pressure. So this is for the following week, going into the middle of October, a build of pressure towards the west and more definitively over the UK by the 14th, the 20th of October. Now, the European model output isn't showing that at all, very mixed signals from there. So, yeah, certainly we wouldn't say we're confident about that signal, but it is just a hint there. So what I would suggest we take away from that is an unsettled week next week, low pressure over the UK, cool and showery. Just some hints of something a little more settled developing around the middle of October, but it's a long way away, and we know how these things can change as you get closer to them, and we'll keep you updated right here of the 10-day trend tomorrow with Alex Deacon. And we'll have another deep dive next week, of course. So don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss that. And thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.